I think we're here. Hello, everybody.
Hey everyone.
Hey, it's great to see you all today on Rise of the GM. We're on episode 118, talking about the Avatar RPG today. And today looks a little different, sounds a little different, different face, at least one right here today. So today we're streaming a little bit different program today, and Sam Grant is here with us again today. Sam, what number are you on here as far as guesting for us?
Well, I think this is three.
Number three?
I
Very
think so.
cool.
Fallout and Sentinels.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So you're getting pretty close to the Master's jacket also that we've been talking about with
Don't you get like a silver version of the Rise of the GM mug?
maybe so, yeah. It's like, yeah,
I'll look forward to
we'll
that.
try to figure those kind of things out. But yeah, we're
Cool.
looking forward to today. I've been wanting to talk about the Avatar RPG for
Yeah,
a while
Avatar
now.
Legends. Yeah.
Yeah, Avatar Legends. And we're going to get to that here in a bit. But before we do that, different things we're going to be talking about today, as well as the Avatar Legends RPG. We're going to talk about an encounter that's a protection job, and we're
Mhm.
going to talk about an enormous butler NPC, which is going to be fun times,
He's big.
as well. Big guy, real big guy. As well as we got at least one haversack question that we're going to walk through. So, yeah, but Sam, glad to have you back on here today.
Hey,
What
thanks
do
for
what have you been up to in gaming this week or lately?
Yeah, so the main thing I've been doing, been between two things. Next weekend, I will be going to Fort Wayne, Indiana for Goodman Games' second annual Dungeon Con.
Yes.
So I'm preparing for that. I'm going to do a little bit of play testing, and then I'm going to run a DCC Lankmar adventure. So I'm getting all that kind of ready. Might get some physical props made up, so that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. And then between that, I've got some other gaming in May I'm doing. I've got some 5e prep for the end of our 5e campaign working on. And then I'm kind of have written and am laying out and doing getting artwork for a module I'm working on to maybe publish. So kind of a lot of different things, but managing and making sure I'm putting enough energy into each of those.
Yeah.
Don't want to neglect the con games when
Right.
people
Yeah.
come. I've been trying to put some work into that, so it's
hmm
been cool and pretty exciting. It'll be a
Yeah.
good summer of gaming.
That's super cool. Yeah. I'm really excited about both the specifically the you getting to run stuff at Dungeon Con.
Uh,
Very sad that I had a moment where I was like, yes, and then it's like just not it's not the weekend that I could like take off and go, which is unfortunate. So I'm hoping maybe next year, if hopefully that's a thing that's next year and we can I can come up there. But I'm excited you're running that stuff. But I wanted to mention that adventure that you're working on, and um I know that's like in process and I don't want to like dig too deep in that, but when that is like done for you, like how do you find that kind of thing?
yeah, so I plan the idea, and we'll see how it goes. Is right now I'm commissioning art. I've got three pieces in the works from an artist from Brazil, and I'm looking to get a couple other things made. But the plan is to try and get that on backer kit this fall,
Okay.
crowdfund, and then my goal is February or January, trying to get that shipped out. So still a lot to learn for me. This is my first. I've never done anything like this,
Yeah,
but
right.
that's my tentative um, goal. So after that's shipped out to any backers that there might be, it will likely be available on the Goodman Games store. It has been approved for publication, and I have to do the rest,
That's awesome.
which was really exciting. Yeah, so he looked at it and he was able to approve it as a third-party publication, and then so I'll probably have that available there, and then I imagine I'll be shipping copies to people who buy them. I don't know where I'm going to do point of sale. It might be a drive-through RPG
Okay.
jam or kind of somewhere else. So still kind of trying to learn all that, but I'll definitely come back with more information if I
Yeah,
learn.
awesome. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, it's been super cool to watch that process happen and see you get jumping in and doing these creative works here. So
Thank you. Yeah,
nice job
it's
on that.
thank you. Yeah, it's I didn't even mention it's a zero level dungeon crawl classics adventure. So
Yeah.
kind of a bayou. funnel. I don't know if I can actually say it's a funnel, but it's a zero level adventure
Uh-huh. Nice.
compatible with Dungeon Call Classic. So it'll be fun.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I feel like I've been in like a gaming hole like recently, which is like super sad. I've been real sad lately. We our Monday nights, the three of us that play are playing Fabula Ultima and have been doing that for a lot of sessions. And then our Thursday actually just we wrapped up Fallout
Nice.
and we have moved into actually Fabula Ultima also on Thursdays, which I am loving because I'm a big fan of that system and have enjoyed that. I'm really hoping to talk about Fabula Ultima sometime soon on this podcast because I think it's a worthwhile one to check out. Also, it's super fun. But just the way things have gone, we've had two Mondays in a row that were canceled, and
Yeah.
last Thursday I had to cancel. It was me that was the problem, and actually I think one of the Mondays was too. um, but it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. But the even tonight, like I have a thing going on that I'm like late getting to gaming, so I'm gonna miss like half of our session tonight, which really stinks. So it's like I'm just missing it, and I can tell that I haven't rolled some dice for a while. So
Does start to get to you. But I
mhm.
will say, do you know if Matthew's character ended up having those kind of cat or rabbit ears he was against, or
He does not. There are no cat ears or tails involved in his character for sure. So
slip the GM some money, make sure it's
yeah.
not? I don't know, but I know he was not feeling it when you talked about the cat ears. So
While he's gone, maybe we'll pull that off sometime.
oh,
Or
awesome.
I will say the guy that's running the game for us, Matthew did turn him into an amorphous blob one time, and he had to keep making will saves in order to stay together. And he kept failing, so he like spent a whole
Mm.
combat as like a blob. So you never know, some cat ears may appear on this
Might
character.
I, I'm gunning for it. It's gonna be great.
Oh man. Well, I think we should jump in here. What do you
That's
say? Yeah,
let's
cool. So I'm gonna read this encounter again, and I know Sam, you know this. If you're new, watching today or listening, we pull our prompts from a book that's been out for a really long time from Gnome Stew. The encounters are from the Eureka book, and the NPC prompts are from a book called Masks. And they had released, I think it's a 5-part series that's all for like GMing quite a while ago, but I've found it to be like really helpful. And even some of the other books that are a little more just about GMing in general, like are pretty awesome. So check those out if you haven't ever heard of those and could use some help with encounters and NPCs. But this is the encounter. It's called the Dragon's Fang. A retired adventurer who lives on a lavish estate approaches the PCs, asking if they'll serve as his protectors. The man who walks with a limp has been receiving threatening letters bearing a single rune that is unfamiliar to him, or so he says. The handwritten notes say things like, quote, the time for our revenge nears, and the Reaper will collect his due. In all, there are 4 such notes. Once the PCs assume the new role, assuming they assume the new role, things start happening quickly. Someone infiltrates the retired adventurer's estate and leaves another threatening note on the glass display case in his trophy room. The note is like the others, and the case holds a memento from a past adventure. A fang, the length of a man's arm, stained dark with blood, which rests in a stylized gold cup that's custom made to hold it. It's a dragon's tooth, he explains. It's the only treasure I took from that expedition. He claims falsely that it was embedded in his leg, and that's the reason he walks with a limp. In truth, the dragon did leave him maimed, but not with a leg bite. The monster slew all his other companions, about which he says, a very sad business that, while shaking his head slowly. Interviews with the adventurer's retainers revealed that they saw a strange, ghostly figure on the grounds, a young warrior in dark leather who appeared at the edge of the vision and then disappeared into the mists. This figure is strangely androgynous and wears a mask that resembles a dragon's head. Some of the retainers say it's a man, others say it's a woman. If questioned on the topic, the adventurer doesn't admit to having seen the apparition or recognizing the dragon mask, but he's unconvincing in his denials. Before long, a bard, which is actually a dragon in disguise, seeks out the PCs and offers to sell them information about the retired adventurer. The bard doesn't know the whole story, but has learned that the surviving children of other members of the adventuring party that were slain during the raid on the dragon's lair are involved. In truth, the dragon cornered the adventurer and offered him a chance to save his own life. The dragon required that he betray his adventuring companions, and the adventurer complied. His treachery was rewarded with a single chest full of riches and a threat against ever returning to the lair. The adventurer pulled the tooth from the body of a dead compatriot as a reminder of what happens when you meddle with dragons. He kept all the gold for himself. The rune is a symbol that the party used to identify itself with. Years later, a mysterious fairy creature, which was the dragon in disguise, visited the dead companion's children and revealed the adventurer's treason and greed. A stakeout reveals the identity of the tormentors who collectively want revenge on the adventurer. They intend to strike fear into his heart before killing him and taking back the treasure that he bought with the blood of their fathers and mothers. Depending on how much the PCs find out about the true situation, they may have mixed feelings about protecting this adventurer. So that's the Dragon's Fang. What do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, it was an interesting adventure. There were a few things that I was might have taken issue with or was interested with. I think from a GMing standpoint, my main thing was as it's written, I was like, man, how do you get your players to care about that? And I would just say for me, I would think, well, either they see contracts or maybe one of the retainers comes into the tavern and has a big bag of gold and he's looking to hire people. But as it was written, I was like, how do they get connected into this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is a thing. One of the things I thought about with this was I feel like there's several um transition points in the
Yeah,
adventure that are open, and like that can go either way for me. Like
yeah,
I felt like there were some that I just like I wanted a little more personally as I read it of like, well, how do
yes.
you go from that point to this point? And I mean, I feel like people jump on stuff pretty well, but it's assuming a lot that it's like when they take this job, it's like, well, if they take this job,
Exactly.
kind of thing. And like, how do you help them move into that if they aren't like so keen on it right away? An assumption that it's like they're suddenly talking to the retainers of this guy. It's like, hopefully they are, and they're like investigating and stuff. But so, yeah,
They should be running into the basement like looking for clues that aren't
right.
there or that
Yeah.
you have to put there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Um, I think the other thing that jumped out to me was this dragon. I thought it was cool and interesting, but I kind of got the feeling one of the things that's hard about, and I guess I'm assuming you're playing D&D, right? You might be playing Pathfinder, but a lot of our role playing games, the creatures kind of build upon themselves. So it's like, oh, I
Mm,
know a dragon is always like this. So when I see a dragon that's shapeshifting, I'm like, that's weird. I'm not,
mm,
not that it can't happen, but
yeah.
for a player, that might be a little strange. So I would think about maybe changing it to a different monster.
Mm,
Uh, Maybe not even a shapeshifter. I thought, like maybe an aboleth that sends other people to do those things, right?
mm,
Or uh, a changeling would make sense to me. That the Fey idea of a shifter was that would make sense to me, but I think as with popular culture being what it is, we're so used to dragons being this thing that guards its hoard that when I saw a
right.
shapeshifter,
Yeah. Yeah.
even me as the GM was like, "Whoa, hold on, what's going on?" So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting to me because when I when I look at like culturally, at least now, I'm sure, we're looking at Smog from the Hobbit movies, or we're looking at, I'm sure lots of people would think like Game of Thrones, like dragons in that, or, you know, the 50 Beowulf movies that there's a dragon at the end, like all
Yep.
these things, which probably isn't what people are thinking about, but, or How to Train Your Dragon, or like whatever, like there's a very like natural kind of physical thing to that monster. And it's funny though, because so when I first started playing role-playing games, I don't I don't recall. I don't recall ever actually experiencing a dragon in WoW,
Mm,
and that may be my mind finally losing bits of story that I like. I feel like I hold on to things pretty well, but I don't remember. Oh no, no, there was one time there was a dragon one
mm.
time, and I remember that now. It attacked us, but it was attacking this whole city, and that's how we ended up with one of our NPCs that was with us like the whole game. But
Oh,
that's not the point. The point is like I didn't experience a dragon there, and so then we went into started playing D&D later, and Rob Henry was running a game, and I remember we went down and we fought a dragon in a swamp, and it was very. It's not what we're talking about today, but it felt a little more DCC-ish to me, like the way that we dealt with that. It's like we're a bunch of peons going down to try to take on this dragon, which
yeah,
probably is like a baby, honestly, but like we think we're awesome. And it was
yeah,
the greatest thing ever to like slay this thing. And then we have this like dragon hide that we're just like, what are we gonna do with this? It's gonna be
yeah,
awesome, you know. But
yeah. That's cool.
so those are my first two. But then when Barry, the first time Barry was running a game for us and he introduced a dragon, it was a shapeshifter. We
Oh,
met we met it in like human form and then
oh,
realized later, oh, this is a dragon. And that's actually something
mm,
I've ripped off massively in multiple games for me where I'm like, I love that idea so much that you're like interacting with this person and then like it's
yeah,
actually a dragon, you know. So
yeah.
it's kind of funny to anyway, that was a big long thing,
Yeah.
but it is kind of an interesting thing. And to your point with that, I'm trying to figure out the dragon's motive this
Yeah,
whole time. Like,
yeah,
and I know it's like it's the prompt for the adventure, and maybe I'm just like digging too deep, but it's like if you can pretty much wipe out everybody, like why did this one guy need to be turned to
yeah,
help it? Like, okay, so maybe I should be not critical, but I should be asking, what's the story there?
mm,
Like, why was that person needed?
yeah,
Um, so that's the thing to ask. And then like just the motive of like, okay, why did you give even like a treasure chest full of gold? Like
mm,
you could have just said, you get your life, get out of here, you know?
yeah,
So why was that? Need to figure that out as a GM. And then even it's like, okay, there's these couple other interactions where shows up as a fake creature that's now telling people, okay, this is how you get revenge. And then it's telling the PCs as a bard. Like all of it's interesting, but I don't know why, you know,
yeah.
kind of thing.
It's intriguing, and it almost one of those things where if someone sat and told you like this is my idea for a book or a movie, you'd be like, what? Like that sounds
Mm,
so. It just feels very disorganized, right?
mm,
So I think to your point, if we had more of those motives, or why does the dragon care? What's going on? That might make it a little more compelling. And maybe
right.
this is they're giving you space as a GM to step in and say,
Yeah.
okay, I think this dragon is under a curse that it has to do this, or this dragon once loved the guy who betrayed his party and human form, and maybe only wanted him to survive. Right? I think maybe they're making a space for us to step in and create that.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I think that's the thing I need to like turn my mentality in with this, where instead of being like, here's all these holes and what the heck's going on, it's like, okay, how do I get creative in this? Or how do we like group create even in the moment of this kind of thing where it's like, what's
Yeah,
the motive? So yeah. I don't know, any other thoughts on this adventure?
yeah, I think it could be pretty useful. I just think you might maybe it's so bare that you can go. You just have to make sure you know what you want to do with it,
Hmm.
because otherwise your party's probably going to be like, why did we even do this, right? Or
Yeah.
it can feel just so random that they just don't care, right? You got to get them interested with either the gold or create that compelling story that's strong.
Mhm. For sure. So think about people that play at your tables. Uh, they find out all this stuff. What do they do? What do you think they do?
Oh, man, knowing some people at our table, I bet they probably want to go kill the dragon, right?
Yeah.
You just see if there's any more gold, right?
That's
You know,
true. True.
or they don't trust anyone, right? This
Yeah.
dragon shape shifting, who can we trust, right? Or
Right.
I could see certain members of our party, trying to, just take out, yeah, we'll protect the old man for the money and then go back and take him out too, right? I could see certain Dragonborn wanting to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I was, man, it kind of how it plays, and the information that people do get. But I could definitely see even a like steal the chest of gold and leave and just let them figure it out, kind of thing. It's like,
Well,
well,
yeah,
so and then you're marked, then the dragon's coming after you. But
yeah,
so
there you go.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, I think it's a cool one. There's some like really interesting stuff in there, and it does leave room for you to to create. So, if you're looking for out there for an encounter you want to throw in, or even like pieces of that, or just kind of an idea of like, okay, what could it look like to bring the history of another adventuring party like into your games? That's a pretty cool thing too. So, um, we'd love to hear it if you use that in your games. But what we're here today for is to talk about the Avatar Legends RPG.
Right.
And I am again super excited, Sam, for you to just be on talking about stuff. And um, I have we had talked about Avatar about this RPG system, and you gifted me with some books, and
Sure.
I've like read through them, and I've made an Earthbender, and
Nice.
it's still out there in the void that one day I'd
Yep.
love to make a cameo or something. I'm excited for it, but I got to go to Magpie's like area at Gen Con. It's been the last 2 years, but the first year I was at Gen Con, um, they had a lot of stuff going on with Avatar specifically, and I was got to like be in some seminars and like listen to that, and just got super excited about the system. And it's one that I'm just really cool. I think it's just really cool, like the way that they've done things. I think there's a really good like heart and mindset behind like the creation of it, and like they really want to deal with the IP in some really cool ways. So that excited me about it, and just excited to talk about it today. So
Sure.
kind of want to like open that up. I know I'm going to have some questions to kind of pitch your way, but I know you kind of had a like a start to that. So do you want to
Sure.
jump in on that?
Yeah, we can jump in.
Cool.
Yeah, so you might be like, hey, what even is this Avatar Legends RPG? Uh, we do have to clarify it is based on Avatar: The Last Airbender, right?
Yes,
Um,
not the blue people.
not the blue people, right? I'm sure somewhere James Cameron's made, but yeah, we're talking about airbenders, earthbenders, things like that. But it's an RPG that is based off of the powered by the Apocalypse system, where you are put into the world of Avatar, and you and your friends are um, going on adventures, right? You might be solving small little problems within your locality. You might be going to the spirit realm, or you might be facing off against the Fire Nation, right? Or Kuvira, people like that. So it's a really cool, very open sandbox world that you get to play in, and that you
Mhm.
get to make and kind of get your own little piece of that, which is really it's a neat experience for players and for people who really love the show and people who get into stuff like the novels and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. A thing I really like about, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead on things, but with just like what is it? The that idea of like you are heroes kind of
Yeah,
thing, like I feel like is a pretty ingrained thing. I mean, if you like watch the show or take part in the other media kind of things, it's like very much about this group of people who are doing things for good, right? And like that's the goal, right? Is that, they're like helping. And I think that that's like a thing that may be a little different to some like sensibilities of other games where it's like, or maybe there's like a pretty wide open, like, yeah, I'm playing D&D 5e and I am an evil character, which is
yeah.
not not my style, but like that is a possibility. Whereas this feels very much like, not that you're not conflicted with things, but it's like, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure, in a bit, but you're hero, you're trying to do heroic things and help. And I don't know, is that how you feel about that? That's what I understood about that.
So the thing I think that is really compelling about this RPG and about the series is that the stories that you tell aren't simply about struggles between different humans or different vendors and nations, right? A lot of those stories that we're so compelled by are, and you get to play out, are the inner struggles of your heroes. And I don't think I haven't explored all the RPGs, but I don't think I've seen an RPG that does that much better than the Avatar Legends,
Mm,
right?
cool.
You think about characters like Zuko, who struggle between, you know, wanting to be redeemed by his father and, you know, also being redeemed in the eyes of society by, you know, chilling out and, you know,
Yeah, right.
Avatar eventually, you know, and you see that struggle in almost every episode that he's in. And
Hmm.
so this RPG does a great job of whatever character you create, there is a certain struggle that they have internally that not only will you deal with in role playing, but other characters might find out about that struggle and push you, right? And give you a hard time. And um, I think the show would be very boring if it was all just bending. I mean, bending's awesome, right? It's great.
Yeah, right.
But part of what's so compelling is, man, how is Aang going to deal with this anger that he has, right?
Right.
Or um, how does Toph deal with her disability and these conflicting feelings that she has? I think
Hmm.
those things are very compelling. And it's really cool that you could replicate that in this RPG.
That is super cool. Yeah, I liked the idea of there being complexity to characters, and it's like encouraged and built in to that, and like to the, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but like into the mechanics of the thing too. So,
Yeah.
um, you've mentioned the show a few times. I know, like, from like, again,
Mhm.
the IP, I know a little bit. My kids watched through the Last Airbender a couple times. We watched a little bit of Legend of Korra. I don't know. I'm not an expert on the IP at all. But I know there's different time, like times of eras, right? So
Yeah.
what does that look like in this game?
So yeah, the interesting thing, you might be like, okay, well, if I'm playing Avatar, you know, am I playing when Aang is around? Am I playing when Korra is alive? Right? What's going on? And the game has five different eras that you can participate in. Right? If you're
Okay.
familiar with the shows, you can participate in the Aang era, you know, during the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender, or the Korra era. Right? Those are the two shows that we get, and everyone
Okay.
gets so far. There's a third one that's coming out. Um, but those are the two that you can play in that, you know, people have seen those, right? There's also the Hundred Years War era, which is in Avatar: The Last Airbender as well, but that's all the stuff leading up to, you know, when Aang gets frozen in the glacier, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so the Hundred Years War is at the end of it. Hey, he is in this glacier, or at the end of the, it might have been the beginning. I apologize, but he's in this glacier, and then 100 years later he emerges, right?
Hmm.
And so that Hundred Years War is um, that conflict. So you can play in the Hundred Years War, and then you can also get into like the Roku and the Kyoshi era Avatar eras, right? And the Roku and Kyoshi eras are not as well detailed in the shows, but I know in some of the novels they get into those. And
Okay.
what was really cool about making this source book in the Avatar Legends RPG is that they were given license to make things canonical uh,
Yes.
within the Kyoshi era and the Roku era. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can play
Yeah.
around.
That was mentioned, that first Gen Con I was at when I was in one of the seminars. And I think it was the guy who,
Nice.
like the main dude, was the one talking. And when he mentioned that whole thing about like talking to, again, I can't remember who owns the IP, but talking to who had that, and it's like, okay, so what do we want to do with these eras? And they're like, I don't know, you're making it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like the room like went silent. Like it was like, what? And it's like, yeah, yeah, like this is like this is an honor, and it's I don't know. I was like, that's amazing that they would like that says something about the game, I think, too, about just like if you're gonna trust somebody to do that, that's super cool. So um where do those the two that you mentioned that are not so well defined on like a time?
yeah, yeah. So the timeline, the very first era you can play in is the Kyoshi era, right? That's the
Okay.
old era that you can play in.
Okay.
Follows that is that Roku era, and that covers the time after Sozin becomes the Fire Lord and right before Roku gets married, right? And then you have that Hundred Years War, you have this Aang era, and then the Korra era.
Okay.
So
That's
currently,
cool.
they might make more stuff. I know they're working on other things that they might make other eras, but
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So what does this look like from a more like at the table, like your rolling of the dice, those kind of things when you're getting into those situations, whether it's like combat or other times when you would actually need to make a check?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this RPG is and it's probably based on the powered by the Apocalypse system, but you only ever use 2d6,
Hmm.
right? In all of your rolls. And a lot of the 2d6 are used for just to see the varying degrees of how well your either your check or your attack goes,
Okay.
right? Um, kind of like the Sentinel system, where you have like a minor twist, success with a minor twist, major
Hmm.
twist, things like that. They have, either you can fail, you can have success with a little bit of a complication, or success with like a more of a major complication, right? So you see something very similar that we've seen in Sentinels, where varying degrees of success occur. Um,
Hmm.
Now, combat is very different in that it's more complicated than this, but it's almost like rock paper scissors in that you have three or four different basic moves that you choose to do, and then based on which one you chose, um, that's the kind of the initiative order, right? Like everyone who is defending and maneuvering goes at a certain point versus everyone who is advancing and attacking, and
Okay.
everyone
Okay.
who's stepping back to observe goes before everyone else, right? And so it plays in the order of, hey, what kind of move did I do, right? If I'm observing, I'm stepping back first, right?
Hmm.
If I'm defending, I might be doing that, and then advancing and attacking goes after that, right? So there's an order in which people kind of do those things, and the GM is to kind of play all those out in that order, right? And kind
Okay.
of it's almost like a I don't want to say poker, but like a card game. I mean, you pick, okay, what's my approach going to be? The GM picks their secret approach, and then okay, you go around the table. What approach did you use? And then
Hmm.
you say, all right, let's start with this, and then go to these next approaches based on this order.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's like, so is it, um, just trying to follow a little bit there,
Yeah,
that is there some reactionary stuff to that, or is it like this all happens the way that it was said, but that may not actually work out as well because it was already kind of set kind of deal?
yeah. So it yeah, you always do like what's interesting is that every encounter is called a combat exchange, right?
Mm,
And we're used to like a lot of RPGs as well. You play until someone dies or they run away. It's
right.
like, right? That's not so much in Avatar Legends, right? One of the things that they do is, as the GM and as the GM and players come to create the story, they decide, does this need to be in another combat exchange, or are we talking this out right now, right? So people get paired off. Maybe I am an earthbender against two waterbenders, right? And I'm having an exchange, and my buddy over there is an airbender against two other waterbenders, and maybe he takes them out or immobilizes them, and that exchange is done, right? And
Right.
then
Yeah.
that character, maybe he goes off and does his other thing, or maybe he comes and helps the earthbender, and that's a new exchange, right? So
Right. Right.
it's almost like there's not one whole battle. There's a bunch of mini battles that kind of break off and
Hmm.
merge, kind of shift as the fiction needs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's a really good, the way you just said that, as the fiction needs. Like I have grabbed onto that in the times that I've like read through things or like heard them talking about it at these seminars. And I really liked that idea of the way, again, I haven't seen it played
Yeah,
out, but like, except for, like I watched it on YouTube for,
yeah,
30 minutes kind of thing. But, um, the, I think it's cool because the way it feels to me is very much like when you watch the show, there
yeah,
may be this interaction where people get hostile and then realize really quickly, like, we don't really need to be hostile to each other. And then it just like ends, kind of thing. Or it's
yeah.
over real fast. It's not like this. It's not like they fight for 20 minutes, kind of thing typically. And they'll be talking in the middle of it. And I feel like the way the mechanics sound, at least,
Mm-hmm.
that it builds into that fiction really well, of like, yeah, it's not just like a duel to the death every single time. It's we we attack each other, defend, and then realize, no, we need to talk this out. Kind of, it's over. So, that, I don't know, does that seem fair for what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely, it's
Hmm.
fair. And one thing I'm looking at here that's really interesting is it says that remember after an exchange ends, meaning after we've resolved all the things that happen in a round, um, there's no requirement to go back into another exchange. Maybe like you said, that
Right.
that
Okay.
right,
Uh-huh.
or maybe you convinced the bandits that they don't really need to be pillaging this town, right? That they don't, or maybe you convince these kids that they don't need to go against these Fire Nation guards
Hmm.
because they don't want that smoke, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Right. Right.
if part of the combat, which we can get into here in a minute, is pressing on the ideals that characters have
Mm.
and trying to convince them to be swayed, right? A
Okay.
lot of us are so used to fighting against monsters in different games that, oh well, they don't think about anything, you just have to kill them, right? You can't convince them of anything. But Avatar Legends is very much, what ideals do my opponents have that I can press on
Hmm.
or press into by a negotiation, in order to dissuade them from their current action,
Okay.
right? Or persuade someone that they don't need to be doing what they're doing, right? Or we're just trying to help, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's cool.
I can give an example. I'm the on and off campaign that I'm running. They are a ragtag group that's trying to discover why there's a famine in this town. And one of the things that they did is they got into a fight with these people who are damaging crops. And I thought they were the firebenders that were damaging the crops or the
Hmm.
local army that's moved in. But there's actually some hungry earthbenders who were hired, right? And so,
Oh
so
wow. Okay.
they kind of had said, like, you guys are essentially our heroes had said, your fight's not against us, right? Like we're not, why are you destroying our crops? Like we're just as hungry as you are. And they
Hmm.
got to stop and have that talk. And
Okay.
some
Yeah.
people went away, but the guy who stayed, they got to kind of get some information out of, and they kind of parted ways, right? It wasn't
Okay. Yeah.
we have
Right.
to beat to a pulp and then we win, right? It
Yeah.
was
Right.
information, and we kind of pressed on that, like we're not your enemy kind of thing.
Hmm. I think that's something, I'm in the mode right now of like our kind of it's only a 4-part series, but the series we're in right now is the beg, borrow, steal kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I'm actually thinking about that for future. I'm going on a tangent here, sorry, but I'm thinking about another round of that for the future that's more oriented of like, well, one of them is based in the DCC
Mm,
monster, like uniqueness of monsters, like
yes.
not a Minotaur, but the Minotaur kind of idea, and like talking into that a little deeper. Um, that's for future. The thing is though, I'm in that mindset of like beg, borrow, and steal, and I feel like this is one of those things that like I get it that it's really tied up into the game to think in those terms, but man, that's a really good mindset to drag into your D&D game, to drag into your Red Markets game, to drag into, like whatever, like, I mean, you may not talk it out with zombies in Red Market, but like maybe some raiders,
Yeah.
um, into your Fallout game or whatever Fabio Ultima. It's like not always has to be, even in those systems, just a like fight to the death or until they, I think there can be a little bit broader of a resolution that maybe
I,
we could think through.
I absolutely agree. And I think that, first of all, to say as a GM and as someone who, I haven't been playing forever, but I am used to 5e, D&D, and all games where you kill the thing, right? And
Mm,
so as a GM, it was hard for me to be like,
mm,
this doesn't have to end in death, right? I think if you're implementing this in other systems, I would just make sure as a GM to prime your players for that, right?
wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That conversation with them and just saying, hey, just so you know, there might not be situations where you have to defeat the guy, right?
Mhm.
Or I'll reward creative thinking. So that might be a good conversation to have before starting a campaign. But
Yeah.
absolutely, you could use this in other things for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So, you mentioned a couple times talking combat specifically because we do love combat.
We do love to fight.
People love to fight, love to roll the dice. So, if you find yourself, against some hostile firebenders, like
Yep.
what does that look like for the GM side of like how do you do this? What are the players taking part in? Like what does that look like?
Yeah. So every single character, NPC or PC, has what's called a basic set of moves, right? So every single person can do a thing where they um, defend and maneuver, right? I want to either get out of the way of an attack or prepare myself for an attack that's going to happen,
Hmm.
right? And that goes first in the exchange. Once we all pick what we're going to do, the defend and maneuver goes first.
Okay.
Uh, there's also advance and attack that goes next. That means, hey, I'm coming at you, right? I'm throwing fire or hitting you with pebbles, whatever I'm doing. I'm choosing a move that allows me to advance and attack, right? And then after that, you people who want to can evade and observe, right? I'm
Okay.
stepping out. I'm gonna see if I can prepare for the next round by doing some quick thinking, right? And so the best way for me to compare that to is in a lot of games you have melee versus I'm blanking.
Ranged or spell casting or something like that. Yeah.
Spellcasting, right? Those are
Mhm.
all attacks, but they're three different schools of attack. So every character can defend and maneuver, advance and attack, and evade and observe, but their specific moves, their specific bending training
Hmm.
within those things fall into one of those three categories.
Okay.
Right? So, like for instance, I played with my brother, and he's an Earthbender, and one of his advance and or one of his advance and attacks is, "Hey, I am pushing a giant rock pillar onto you, so you can't
Hmm.
move." Right? Um, what he might have another move that's defend and maneuver, where he puts a big wall around himself.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Or the waterbender might have a water whip that's evade and observe, and I'm tripping you up, right?
Hmm.
Trying to take you down, but I'm not exactly attacking. So
Right.
there's kind of three schools of moves. Everyone has basic moves, but then their specific bending moves fall into those three schools.
Hmm.
So how a combat goes as a GM is first I am going to look at all my NPCs that are fighting, and I'm going to pick one of those three schools for each of those
Okay.
NPCs. Right. Write down those answers. I have physical cards that I can put in front of me,
Hmm.
and also my players do as well, and they reveal, hey, I'm going to evade and observe. Right. So after
Hmm.
I've picked all mine, my players pick their approach, and then I say, okay, let's reveal them, and then we go down in that order, right? Defense first, attack second, and evasion third,
Okay. Huh.
and kind of resolve them piece by piece, right?
Yeah.
So I say like, okay, everyone who's defending and maneuvering, let me know. Okay, and then I talk about, okay, what were you trying to do? Well, I was trying to put up this ice wall. Okay, yeah, you do that.
Hmm.
Or I was trying to do that, right? And then you go through each of those approaches and ask, okay, what were you going for? Here's what happens, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that once again is you're dealing with the fiction and
Yes.
then I'm using Sentinel's terms, but you're justifying it with the rolling and such when you get to
Yes.
that place. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Mm.
So, um, yeah, yeah, you want to justify that with the roll and see how it kind of goes,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You try to go do your water whip and it evaporates because you put up I don't know, I'm on walls, but you put up a firewall, right? You and because you have to defend and maneuver first, that firewall was already up. You planned on water whipping, but that water evaporated. It
Yeah.
was
Right. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
so
That's cool. I like that order of events
yeah,
situation too. That makes a lot of sense for that. That's
definitely.
cool. Um, so when we're thinking about combat,
Mhm.
people are going to get hit by these water whips and fire blasts and pillars of earth and such like that. I'm understanding that it's not HP as I know it, as far as like a big bag of hit points. It
Yeah.
plays out a little different.
It plays out as I believe it's called fatigue, right? So whenever someone attacks you, you have a certain amount of squares or diamonds for your fatigue, right?
Hmm.
So I got hit by this water whip, and man, it hurt. So I mark off two boxes, right?
Okay.
And or I went all out, and I was trying to hit him with this giant boulder. Well, I need to mark off a box, right?
Hmm.
Every character has a different amount of fatigue that they can take, for lack of a better. There is an official term, but it's escaping me right now.
Okay.
But once you get to zero, you're not dead. If you wanted to be, you could, but you're out of commission, right? Maybe you collapse. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe whatever it is, you cannot participate in this round, and you need to go rest, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not as much. It is HP in a way, but again, I like that you can burn it by straining yourself,
Hmm.
right? Or just different things you can go through that'll take that down rather than just, I got hurt, right? It could be the mental strain of this battle or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then within that, there's also these things called statuses. So a lot of the evade and observe attacks, if I'm making a sheet of ice on the ground, well, maybe that's going to make my enemy stunned. He's caught off guard for a few seconds, so
Mm.
he takes a penalty to what he's trying to do, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and there's an escalation of those things, right? You're stunned, and then you're trapped,
Hmm.
and then impaired, and then you're doomed, right?
Okay.
Really
Okay.
bad. But all these things stack on each other. Like, I think my siblings, I mean, the earthbender had like pinned a guy under a rock, and then some water, I think the waterbender was like trying to drown him. Like, it was bad. He was doomed, and it was pretty serious for this
Hmm.
NPC, right?
Okay.
So these things stack, but also you have things like being empowered, sorry, prepared, inspired, favored, or empowered, right?
Okay.
Positives.
Yeah. Right.
These are all statuses that you have. We think about in D&D or other games, you might be restrained or poisoned or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
These are all positive and negative statuses that can stack from different attacks or circumstances.
Okay. Are those modifiers for the
Uh,
negatives and positives? Is that how that works?
yes, they are, right?
Okay.
So, like trapped, you're completely helpless. You must mark a combination of either three conditions or fatigue to escape.
Okay. Okay.
And I,
Interesting.
I didn't actually I didn't go over conditions, right?
Okay.
Conditions are kind of like in red markets when you have, I think you're rattled or you're
Um,
sorry, I know.
I've got too many systems floating around in my head right now. But it's the oh my goodness. It's the humanity
Yeah.
checks and it's oh man, I've lost what it is totally. There's the three thresholds though.
Yes.
One of them is break. That's the last one.
Mm,
You have one where you fight, flight, or freeze. That's your
yes.
first one. The second one, when it happens, you get like a long-term problem, maybe like that you're trying to like forget, I can't remember the exact terms, but
Okay. It's
I know what
okay.
you're saying.
No,
Sorry, I've
no. I've been asking you questions out of the blue, right? Conditions, right? So, and this is something I'm glad the book kind of helped me remember. So I got the book with me. It's been a minute since I've run
yeah.
I'll just be clear. Be like, what are you looking at, right? When you fight, not so here's what brings it home is this: you have boxes of fatigue that you can accrue, but also you have the option. I could either mark a fatigue or I could mark a condition. So this move, maybe it didn't make me tired, but it made me afraid.
Okay.
I have a -2 now to intimidation checks and calling someone out. I'm afraid to do those things, right?
Okay. Huh.
Maybe this thing made me angry, right? So I have a -2 to comforting others or assessing a situation because I'm just too mad, right?
Mhm.
So there are five different conditions, and then there are the fatigue. So once you've marked all the conditions and all the fatigue, then you're out.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
not just HP; it's how is this making your character feel emotionally, right? As
Hmm.
you see your
Hmm.
friends kind of beaten up, or as you see this injustice occurring, right?
Yeah.
So the conditions are afraid, angry, guilty, insecure, and troubled.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know?
Yeah. It's a different system. Vason talks they're the year zero, but there's some like similarities. It's not the same, but
Sure, sure.
the way that conditions work uh, is very similar in my mind. Where it's like I love the narrative aspect of that, where it's like there's a mechanical more and more just love anytime people are combining those things where it's like, yeah, there's a mechanical thing. It sounds like for Avatar, if you're have a negative condition, you have a
Yeah,
negative modifier, but you also have this narrative element of like, I'm confused or whatever. But in the same way, and like in Vaesen, you may have these conditions that like either physically or emotional or mentally, that you are playing out now, and it's making you have less dice to roll in your pool. But it's another one of those things. So again, I'll talk about that some other time. But I like that a lot of just how to see, okay, these things are happening and it's actually affecting the narrative and the mechanics at the same time in a really cool way. So that sounds
yeah.
cool. I jumped over something massively that I think you were planning, and that was actually like, what does a character look like as far as like creating one? And I'm sorry for that. We're like
That's
talking about these like in these.
his moves. Yeah,
I jumped you ahead, but
that's all
you
right.
want to take a minute to talk about just like, okay, I'm ready to play this game. I want to make a character. I want to make my Earthbender.
Yeah.
What's involved in that?
Okay. So Adam, I've got to actually. So backing up, one of the things you want to do when everyone jumps into Avatar, it's like I can't wait to be a blank bender, right? I'm going to
Uh,
be Earthbender. I'm going to be this, right? And that's part of it. But one of the big things is there are these archetypes of characters that they call playbooks. And so
okay.
playbooks are here's a type of person you can be. And you have to think about this character that you want to be. So, for example, Adam, you're an earthbender and you're the hammer, right? And as a character, whatever your playbook is, you got certain stats. They might tell you about your demeanor. They might give you
Mhm.
ideas for what your character, their past might be like. But the big thing about the playbooks is they set up um, the internal struggle that your character is going to have, right? So
Okay.
as the hammer, your principles or your two, sorry, one thing on the screen, your two things that you struggle between are force versus care, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I'm the hammer, right? It says the hammer is strong, tough, and looking for a deserving face to punch. Play the hammer if you want to grapple with what force can and can't solve,
Mm.
right? So it actually, I don't know if you remember the character the Boulder from Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's not. He's a pro.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
a pro wrestler, right? He's not a main character,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But he's just this big hunk, and he's always saying like the Boulder is conflicted about punching a little girl, and just this
That's awesome.
very minor character. But uh, as the hammer, what you would be role playing is I'm stuck between these principles, right? I'm a weapon. It's time for me to jump in and punch, but maybe I'm going through a situation where one of my party members is dealing with depression, right? Or the loss of a family member. I
Okay.
can't fight my way out of that, right?
Right.
The other side of that principle is care, right? I want to care for people,
Hmm.
and I'm kind of torn between those two, right? So as whatever you pick for your playbook, you're going to have these principles that you're pushed and pulled between. That's your internal struggle.
Okay.
You have moves that go with those playbooks, right? But each playbook has moves that kind of fit in with your character's how do I say it? Your character's internal struggle, right?
Okay. Okay.
I'll pull up. I mean, another one here. I want to pick ones that really kind of bring this home, right?
So
The,
what? Oh, go ahead.
you got it.
Let's say so as your we start character creation
Yep.
before you even are like, I want to bend water, you want to think about archetype because you want to know like what kind of character you're
Yeah.
playing.
It,
But in all those like, so if I pick the hammer, so it
yeah.
was the hammer,
Yep.
can the hammer fit in any of those? It's
Any
just that it's any like bending, like you
yes.
could do
Yes.
that, right? So
And
okay, yeah.
actually, I would argue when I first opened this book, I was like, well, how much damage do all these moves do? Like, where's all the cool bending, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's there, but I almost feel like
Yeah.
bending is second to narrative in this,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
cool.
that makes
Right?
sense. Hmm.
So, as the hammer, to answer your question, you can be any bender, you can be a non-bender, right?
Hmm.
So there's the
Right.
four types of bending: air, water, earth, fire. But there's also you could be a character like Sokka who uses weapons,
Right.
right? Or you could be a technological character like a lot of the
Oh,
core.
that's right. That's right. Mhm.
So bending is very, and your it's called your martial archetype, right? That's very much second to what your character is like,
Okay.
right? As the hammer.
Cool.
Um, just another example here. I've got a character. The archetype or the playbook is called the Pillar. And the Pillar is an experienced team player and the leader of a famous group of warriors. Play the Pillar if you want to be a savvy tactician who binds the team together. And the Pillar struggles between the principles of support versus the principle of leadership. Right?
Okay.
So support is all about intentionally moving into a supportive position, helping others, uh, and then you also have that leadership, right? Do I want to be the guy in front or am I the guy in back? And the kind of the
Yeah.
pull between those,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so you might be asking, okay, well, why do I even need these playbooks? Well, first, they're good for role playing, right? That's the main purpose, is to really get into some characterization. But in the mechanics, you have this balance track that you start in the middle,
Hmm.
but certain actions will shift you more towards being more supportive or more of a leader as you
Okay.
pillar, right? So
Yeah.
someone, not only are you trying to take each other out in combat, but earlier I said you can call people out on their principles. That's what this move is, right?
Hmm.
You start in the middle of this balance track, and you might be shifted one way or the other depending on how someone calls you out, right? Or
Okay. Hmm.
something that happens in front of you. When you shift all the way to the edge, one way or the other, your character changes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you are taken out of the situation. You're like, I am changing so much. I'm going through so much emotional turmoil that I had to get out of here, right?
Hmm.
You're still in the party. It's not like you
Hmm.
die or anything, but you have to go off and think about how you have changed as a person.
Okay.
And you and your GM have to sit and you write up a new balance track, right?
Oh, wow.
I went into support. Now I don't know what my other thing is, but now I'm between support and something else. Starting to
Interesting. Okay.
right? And you can also do certain moves mechanically to resist shifting your balance, right?
Hmm.
Like I know you're trying to call me out about how I'm not being a leader, but I just did this for our team. So there's that, right? You might, if you roll high enough, you might resist being shifted a certain
I
way.
see. Yeah.
And so as you as a player and as a GM, you're kind of trying to help. You're trying to shift those things
Hmm.
to your advantage, but also to tell a good story, right?
Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, so let's talk about playbooks and archetypes kind of there. I know we had talked about or mentioned training and style. Like, are those kind of wrapped up in that, or is that something that's
Uh,
different with that?
yeah. So the training is that is the term for your like your bending, right?
Okay.
So I'm a firebender, I'm a water bender, right, or whatever. And then your style might be some of the moves that you pick. So there's a whole index of these are the firebender moves, right? These are the waterbender moves, and you kind of pick a few of those.
Hmm.
Now, what's interesting is when you get to pick them, like when we sat down for character creation, there's a lot of people, oh, these attack moves are really cool. But you can do that, but you might want a balance, right? Of I want a good move for attacking and I want a
Hmm.
good move for defending, right? I don't want to be all one because there might come a situation where I need to evade and observe, right?
Okay.
Things like that. So there's some interesting choices you have to make in the back, not just what looks flashy, but what might be useful as far as you don't want to be the guy who just defends, right?
Yeah. Or you may, right?
Or hey, yeah, you defend it, right? Breakwater.
I was gonna say I'm was trying to pull up my character that I made because I was thinking I'm like, man, I'm having this with Fabula Ultima right now where I just really, really love the interposing myself, between damage and my allies kind of thing. And I'm like, I think that may have started with the Earthbender. So
Uh,
um
maybe.
yeah.
So,
So if we're thinking about like a campaign with this and just like the scope of that, how do you speak into that kind of thing?
yeah, so one of the things you want to do, so if you sit, let's say you sit down and you get a group together, you say, we're going to play the Avatar Legends RPG. The first thing you want to do is you want to pick your era, right?
Mhm.
Like this is a story we're telling in the Korra era. Okay, great. So you pick an era that you all agree upon. And I don't have it in front of me, but there is a sheet that you pick up and you say, okay, this whole sheet is going to tell what our goals are and how we've met as a group.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
cool.
met because this happened, and you insulted this noble, but I came in and I was able to talk the police down,
Mhm.
and then we kind of escaped, and then you fed me when I was hungry, right? And we all became friends.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So you
Hmm.
kind of plan out the almost the meat as a meat cute for your characters,
Hmm.
and then
That's
you also
cool.
plan the scope of what you're going to do, right? So for my characters for my campaign I've been running, they're all in the I believe they're in the Roku era. They're gonna be mad at me. I forgot, but uh, they're in an era where the Fire Nation is trying to colonize and take over the Earth Nation. So
Okay.
They are all, and this is before Avatar: The Last Airbender, the events of that show. They are all in the midst of this Earth kingdom where they live kind of on the edges of society, kind of in the wilderness that we don't really see a lot of in the
Hmm.
show or as much of. And so they're seeing the Fire Nation kind of creep up and take a city, take another city, occupy
Okay.
it, right? It's not an
Yeah.
all-out war. It's kind of a colonial occupation, seeing how far they can push. And so their goal is to eventually save their current city from colonization, right?
Okay.
So part
Understood.
of that is involved trying to relieve this famine. Um, there's a blockade they have to go around, right? And it's been interesting though because the whole army is not there, right? It's not like the entire Fire Nation forces are at their city, but
Hmm.
they got a lot of forces there, and so they've had to live with these firebenders and these Fire Nation people, but also try to kind of subvert what's happening, right?
Interesting.
It's occupation. Like for example, um, there was a big to do when one of the Fire Nation guys kind of strutted about the public square and was bragging about, "Oh, we just took this city," like it was awesome, and a freedom fighter got up and got really angry and started to yell and here to fight them. And my players had to decide, well, am I going to help this freedom fighter or am I going to risk being thrown in jail or beaten up by the occupying forces? Right?
Wow. Yeah,
It
that's
was,
cool.
it wasn't just beat up the guy. It's like they had a real struggle. Like, do we get involved or not? Right? So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Huh. That's cool. I love the like I feel like you could just have a lot of diversity in what you doing. Like I come from a very homebrew like style anyway, so
yeah,
I get that, but I love that it's like built in.
yeah,
Like it's like when with some of the stuff we do, it's like okay, pretty much like either individually have to come up with everything or like as a player, like as a table, we're coming up with everything, but there's still like work going into this. And not that there's not work with this, but I just feel like there's some really cool options laid out for you already that are like, oh, I can work within that sandbox in like a really fun way, and we can tell the story together. And I just really like that about this the IP, the system, like everything with that.
well, and I won't get into too much detail, but one cool thing about this, the cool rule book is that they have, hey, if you're going to play in this era, here are the kind of stories you could tell, right?
Oh, nice.
A lot of themes. They give you themes and details. Like you might tell a story about corruption in this era.
Hmm.
Excuse me. You might tell a story about personal sacrifice in this era. So they give you a lot of good tools and seeds to
Yeah.
these things out.
That's kind of a cool thing, I think, to even like lay before your group. When you were talking about earlier, and we didn't use the term session zero, but if you're sitting around in the like creation mode time, session zero spot, and it's like, hey, like here are some differences, and here's how like combat may turn out instead of what you're used to. Those are also some cool things about like, okay, what era do we want to be in? And here's the kind of like, it's like what you'd said. Here are the types of stories we could tell within this really easily. What do you guys want to do? And I think that's a cool way to just like engage your players too and have some buy-in with that, where they like make that decision of like, yeah, we really want to fight the man. So we're going to put it in, this, and I think that's cool.
Definitely.
Um, I know one of the things that we mentioned talking about was just balance.
Mm.
And I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but would you want to maybe speak into that a little bit or maybe there's not more. I know you were talking about the like swinging too far, having to switch up. Like, do you think there's like more
Yeah.
to be explored with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I will tell you. So one of the reasons that I'm not as well versed in this game is for me as a GM, it is difficult to run,
Hmm.
and that's a personal feeling on me. Not, oh, this game is hard. You're gonna have a hard time, right? But it is very role play intensive, right? Um, I'm really used to, oh, I can drop in these monsters and see how they react, right? But in
Right.
Avatar Legends, it's very much okay, I have to be thinking about the hearts and minds of these characters and how they're going to feel. And my players have to think about them too, right? And
Hmm.
so it's very role playing intensive, which is great, but you also kind of you have to be very prepared to have players who are willing to get in, make a character, and really embody that, right?
Yeah.
Mechanically and within the game as well. So, but balance is a very important part, right? there are specific. I told you earlier there were moves you can use in combat, but there's also what they call balance moves, right?
Mm.
Things that you can do to. I'm not just attacking you; I'm trying to upset you, right? Or
Yeah, right.
kind of literally throw you off emotional balance.
Hmm.
So the balance things, you can take an action to say, "Hey, are you really living up to your principle as a protector?" Right? Look at these women and children you abandoned. Right? That's a
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they either have to try to resist that shift, or automatically, if they don't do well enough, they get shifted towards that other pole within their
Right.
alignment or their balance chart. Right? Um, you can also call someone out. I guess that was calling someone out. I just did. You can deny a call out, right? No, I'm not defending these women and children right now because we've got these other things we need to do, and maybe I resisted that balance being shifted, right? Um, and you can ultimately obviously lose your balance, right?
Mm.
The book
Yeah.
says your character's balance is their heart, what guides their story and their long-term development all
Mm.
the time, right?
Yeah.
So this is where you really start to tell those stories.
Hmm. That's cool. So what does leveling up look like? Is
Yeah,
leveling up a thing?
leveling, yeah. So there isn't as much levels in this, right? It kind of takes your character might, just as I said earlier, you might be shifted and your character changes their balance track. You might learn more and you could change your balance track in a positive way, right? Maybe I finally became happy with my struggles between wanting to be alone and wanting to be a team player, right? And
Hmm.
so maybe my advancement is, hey, I learned this new move and my balance track changed, right?
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
very much a thing you negotiate with your GM,
Hmm.
right? It's a very character driven. But I mean, there are other things in advancement you can do. One of the things about which we didn't talk a lot about is your move. There's a certain degree to which you have mastered your moves, right? There's like, I'm going to butcher them, but there's knowing the move, there's practicing the move, and mastering the move in combat.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So the more you use them, the more effective they are mechanically, right? But as it stands, there are certain moves that's like, oh, well, I need to work on that. So I'm going to use that in combat more. And that's part of my advancement, right? Is I've mastered this move. Mechanically, I'm better at it. I don't have to take as many penalties on that
Okay.
move.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But then the other thing is there are obviously you could get into the what they call special bending techniques, right?
Hmm.
And when you do that, you usually have to seek out a master to teach you, right? So
Oh, interesting.
I
Yeah.
really want to learn metal bending. Well, I can't just do that. My GM has to send me on a quest to meet Toph Beifong, right? And
Hmm.
maybe my quest is to convince her to teach me, and maybe she,
Okay.
whatever, kid, fine, I'll teach you, right? And that's your advanced pleasure. You get to become a metal bender, and there's a couple metal bending moves, or lava bending, right, or other things like that. So advancement usually comes in the form of either a character change or a character mastering their training or seeking out further
That's
training.
cool. Yeah.
Kind of the main ways you can advance within the Avatar world.
Okay. Yeah. And once again, we're seeing narrative is king here, where
Yes,
those are happening because it's not just like ding, I now I'm a master. It's like, no, you went and did this stuff. And um I know I know we've talked about it before, and we're both kind of more into, I feel like, into this right now, but like even tangenting it again, but you mentioned to me the Spellburn podcast, which I've been binging lately. It's just about Dungeon Crawl Classics. And there's some of those things that I feel like are built into that
yeah,
style too, of like, yeah, you know, you want this item, cool. Well, you have to go and like get the components to create the item, not just like, oh, I go to a shop and buy it, kind of thing. Or yeah, you want to learn the spell, well, cool, you need to go get the, once again, the elements of the spell and figure out somebody who knows how to cast it, who can teach you, if they
yeah,
will even teach you, because they want to keep it secret, like. And I think
absolutely.
that's a a thing. And I'm also just, for everybody watching, our chat's a little different today because we have a different setup, so I'm just now seeing. But Rob asked in the archetype section, is there the sociopath?
That's a player that comes in built in with all your players.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Sorry, I missed that earlier, Rob.
That's
Um, so I think like just maybe kind of wrapping up this
sure.
talk here, moving on into our next stuff. But it from where I'm sitting, again, not having touched it very much, but listening to like what you've had to say and other people, if it's like if you are interested in some like majorly narrative driven
Yes.
character like exploration and playing with those tensions like within a character, it seems like a pretty uh from a player side, maybe more simplified like mechanics, but like from a GM side, there's some work to do, like to make sure that you're on it for that. But if you're like looking for that kind of game, it seems like a pretty good fit for that. Does that sound fair as far as
Absolutely. And every GM has their strength. You know, if you're really good at tapping into the role playing, and the mechanics, letting those mechanics make sense to you, this is definitely the game for you. I think this is a great game that a lot of people can use. But if you're like me and you're like, oh man, I'm not as good at role playing or making my players role play, right? Then it might take a little more homework, but it is worth
yeah,
it, right? I think they do a great job of wedding mechanics to role playing, but as someone who's not as used to that, it does take some work to get your head around.
yeah, for sure. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Sam, for talking about this specifically today. I've been, again, wanting to do that for a long time. I did want to say to anybody listening or watching in the
Mm-hmm.
next 2 days, this is April 23rd, 2026. So if you listen to this in a year, no good for you. But Humble Bundle actually has a physical uh, item bundle on right now for Avatar Legends RPG, which is pretty cool. It's got the starter pack, it's got like a dice set, it has a GM screen. And three other things that I can't remember right now, but it looked pretty cool. Again, that stuff always goes to charity as well on Humble Bundle, so you can check that out. It's got like 2 days left on it. So if you're like, man, I really want to play that, I want to check that out. It's a good
It's
way to
phys-
do it. What do you say, Sam?
it's physical.
And it's physical too. Yeah, I think that's a cool thing too, because a lot of times, which is PDFs are great and everything, but like sometimes I get on Humble Bundle and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. And they're like, oh, it's just a PDF.
Yeah.
Not sure, but the physical, sometimes that's just the way to go, right? So I still have shelf space, so
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's move on here to our NPC. Again, thanks Sam for talking through that. It was good. Our NPC is a funny one today as I pull this up because it is a ginormous butler. Ginormous. It is a enormous butler, according to them. Braden Tourmaline. As nearly 7 feet tall, Braden is a giant man, though handsomely proportional in all his features. He moves with a grace that belies his stature. His clothes, including his shined shoes, are finely tailored. There's nary a hair out of place. He is a gentleman's gentleman, exceptionally skilled in all the domestic duties, meticulous and graceful. On the rare occasions when he speaks, it's in a high-pitched, squeaky voice that seems out of place, which is why I didn't do the quote at the beginning also. Quiet but alert, little escapes his notice. Braden's loyalty to his employer is without exception. He won't discuss his past, but he's demonstrated that he's a capable bodyguard, cook, courier, and secretary. He always suggests straightforward action when asked for advice. His only wish is to provide the best service with honor, distinction, and discretion. And this is his background. Never able to fit in because of his size, he entered military service. In weapons training, he developed a coordination that he lacked growing up, and he acquired discipline during his uniform service. When he saved an officer's life, the young aristocrat took approving notice of his skills. The officer offered Braden a job as his valet and confidant. His main job is to see to the gentleman's grooming, wardrobe, and professional and personal schedule. They have maintained that arrangement for nearly 2 decades. This is Braden Tourmaline, the enormous butler. What do you think, Sam?
I think he is an interesting novelty and he could be used for comedic effect, which we'll talk about. But other than that, I don't know what I would do with him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. He's funny. It's like, and it's
yeah,
interesting. I think the like, so if you took away the fact he's 7 feet tall,
yeah,
it's like
He's
He's
a
just a
butler.
dude. He's a
Yeah,
butler, kind of thing. It's not, I mean, it sounds a lot like what a butler should do, except
yeah,
for like the background stuff. It's like, okay, well, he was military. I think this was written. I don't know if you watched Downton Abbey at all. We've watched it a lot in our house, but I think about one of the guy who comes in and plays the valet. It's like there was a military connection there
absolutely.
where they served together, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you should come, work with me." I was thinking about him, but this would have been written before that came out. So like drawing from some of that stuff, but then you add the fact that he's 7 feet tall, gigantic, and imposing. It's like, okay, suddenly something's different, there. And I mean, you could either let him be a giant human, or like
Or
if you're
Jack.
playing a fantasy game, he's half
Yeah.
giant, he's a Goliath, he's, these kind of things. So, yeah,
And
I
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
This made me think of like Lurch from the Addams Family.
Absolutely. That was an initial thought. Just the fact that the squeaky voice thing is
Yeah,
funny to me.
it is.
And I think you mentioned comedic effect. I don't know if you had more thoughts on that, but that would definitely be one of those the first time he spoke.
Yeah.
If you could get a good voice down and be like, the table's going to lose it there. So I don't know
Right
were you thinking with
now,
that?
he is, like how massive he is. He opens the door. He's really scary looking. It's dark, and he's like, hello.
Yeah.
Well, this is worth, I'll just say, slight detour. My wife reminded me, she always reminds me, there's a scene in the third Pirates of the Caribbean movie where they have this war council.
Hmm.
And there's this character who's like this pirate king from India. And he doesn't say anything. He has a guy speak for him. And he just has a retainer who will speak for him. And you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
like that. At the very end, they all like, okay, we're going to go to war. And he gets up and he goes, surely we will go to war. And it's hilarious. So it can be done pretty well. And I think it could be good. I
Yeah,
do
for
think
sure.
I think he has to have a natural place. Like I personally don't have a lot of use for butlers in a lot of my games, but if
Right. Yeah.
you're playing an urban game, maybe you have a lot of like manses and politicians or characters. I could use him. I think he could be cool. Right?
Hmm. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to connect him to our encounter. Like you have this guy who, got rich off of the thing, but it kind of loses the military. Well, I guess it didn't have to lose the military thing.
Yeah.
But him being somebody who would connect into that because you're in this manor and such. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have at least once per campaign, there's some kind of connection to like a rich person in a mansion. So I feel like that probably would like work for me in some way. But I really would want to explore his background. I
Yeah.
think like that's what I'm interested in about this guy, other than the fact he's huge. And yeah, I don't know.
I, I
That's
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I could see a situation where maybe there's a siege at the mansion or whatever, and he jumps into action, and you're like, "Whoa!" Right? And he's a really
yeah,
powerful
yeah.
NPC. That could happen.
surprising to uh surprising to everybody that he can do what he does being the butler, right? So yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Well, we got one more thing, the haversack today, and we do have one that I wanted to go through from Evan Bright,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna pull that up here, maybe, or maybe not.
Mm.
Trying to remember where I sent that to you earlier.
It was in a messenger.
Okay, here we go. Yes,
Good question.
this one's from Evan Bright, and yeah, a good question I wanted to hit on today. I feel like maybe we started to talk about something earlier that could connect to this. So, he wrote, "How can I encourage my players to make connections to NPCs or PCs as
Mm.
part of the backstory? In one of my game groups, my players regularly make PCs who are effectively self-taught orphans with no surviving family or friends, which isn't bad, wrong, fun, but I would like to encourage them to come up with some person or people in their characters that their characters have connection with, because it may lead to adventure hooks or roleplay opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist."
Mm.
You got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have two. So the one that's shorter is that like, those characters can be fun and interesting, right? I'm not saying you can't tell a good story with them, but they are weird and they should feel weird to everyone else around them, right?
Mm, mhm.
If they're very like I don't know, edgy, maybe they're not. I don't know. But I think of like Rorschach from Watchmen, right? Like he's
Yeah.
great. He is so much of a vigilante that even though the other heroes are kind of weird out by him, like, I don't really like
Right.
to be on this guy.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't shun all of your PCs socially, but maybe there should be some interesting interactions where people are like, okay, like you kind of weird me out with your like orphan, don't need anyone attitude.
Yeah.
The other side of that, I would say, is I would encourage you to put your PCs in situations where they need someone else. They can't do it on
Mm,
their own, right?
mhm.
Your orphan wants to get into the Mages College. They can't get that. They can't get a recommendation, right, by being a plucky young orphan. They have to make friends with or reach out to an archmage who can write them a letter recommendation or get that connection. Or maybe we can make it more physical, right? Like I can't get through the stinking bog without making friends with Giancarlo of the Perfumers Guild because he's going to give me musk that deters predators, right? And if I don't have that, I'm going to get ripped alive, ripped
Yeah,
apart.
right, right.
I would put them in situations where they need someone,
Hmm.
and they can't just rely on either okay rolls or your grace as the GM, right?
Right.
Like situations where you need other people because you might be heroes, but you can't do it all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that too. And because I think like the motivation of that, like what Evan's asking is it does create these hooks and it creates this like need for other people when there's that stuff going on. And I can see why it's important to have that. I like to pull on those things.
Yeah,
And that's one way. I mean, like Matthew's talked about it a bunch, but in my last campaign that I ran for them, there was a bunch of stuff where he was like, yeah, I have these brothers. I'm kind of estranged with my father and my older brother because of blah 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 blah. And like, he always wanted him to succeed and didn't really care about us. But I'm close to my younger brother. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna like kidnap your younger brother like immediately. That's like what's gonna happen.
yeah,
And like that was a good way to create movement across the world was this like trying to seek out the brother. Situation, but it was all tied into other stuff, or it was like Josh was from the Underdark, and he was a drow that had like come out of the Underdark, but had this like weird tension where there was like a romantic interest still down there, but his mother was terrible, and like she wanted to use him as a weapon, but he didn't want to be there, and like okay, so now we're going into the Underdark to your city because you have to for this reason, and now you got to deal with this stuff. And so that stuff does spotlight your characters, and it adds these hooks, and it adds times where you got to lean on other people like you're saying and stuff. So I like the idea of asking for that at the beginning of a game, and I don't think that's out of bounds for the GM to say, hey, while you're like creating this character and talking about your backstory, um, give me one, at least one like bond or dependent or someone who did something in your background that like helped, like or like hurt you, or like maybe it's a trauma from your past, like whatever that is, but it's somebody connected. And that was something that like in the Fallout game we just played, I was a robot. I was a Mr. Handy kind of thing, and I was like a floor model in a tangenting here again, but I was a floor model in a store, like a department store
mhm.
that like when the war and the bombs dropped and everything, everybody's like either dies or turns into ghouls or whatever. And I'm just like sitting there still cleaning the department store. And like in my backstory is like a ghoul had come in and we had made friends and he fixed me. And he was the reason I had weapons attached to my chassis was because he helped me like defend myself kind of thing. So that guy never came into play, but there were like other reasons where it was like Matthew's character was a ghoul,
Yeah,
and I had an affinity to him because this other, so not to
yeah,
talk about all that stuff, but so talking to Evan and anybody out there going through this, I think like asking for that at the beginning is not out of bounds for the GM because it's super helpful. And like I get some games, maybe people want to just kind of like be simple, with that. And I get the orphan, I don't need anybody. I've been a lone ranger for a long time kind of thing, but uh having that helps connect with people. But the other thing is like in game,
Hmm.
I think there's ways you can do that if it's not been built already, and do some of that group creation stuff where it's like, I don't know, you're going into a new city and being like, hey, would two people offer up like somebody here,
Yeah.
like that kind of like I know a guy. It's that I know a guy kind of thing
Yep.
where and like let's in the moment create something and then we can press on that a little bit.
Well, and the two things I'll add real quick. Another way you can make that an incentive for that is make a mechanical benefit to having one of those characters, right? Um, and won't get into the weeds, but in DCC Lankmar, you roll up a good and a bad thing that's happened to you, right? And one of those good things can be, hey, I got a boat, or I've got a friend who will do this for me, right? And you can make that backstory, right? But give your players a mechanical benefit that you're making them role play
Yeah.
without without saying role play, right? You're like, hey, here's this thing you got, but how'd you get it? And that it kind of will hopefully inspire some role playing. The other thing I would say is it can be very difficult to have a party of people who all have the same backstory and the same demeanors, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it'd be like, my parents never loved me, and well, my parents never loved me either, right? It's like, okay, well, now what do we talk about, right?
Right.
In my first 5e campaign I was in, we were all new, a lot of us were new, and it ended up almost every one of our backstories was, I need to avenge my father.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, that's fine. Like, how's the GM going to do five of those stories, right?
It's
And
all the same father.
it's the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dad, yeah. Uh, but that it does get a little tiring, and your interactions from PC to PC aren't as interesting, right? If they're all
Yeah.
same stock type of character. So
Yeah, yeah,
it benefits everyone if things are a little shooken up, right? And if you can give those role playing opportunities out
for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. On that note, I
there.
think we will wrap it for today. We don't have any fun music here at the end this time around, but really appreciate you, Sam, coming on, and glad to
Yeah.
always have you. Glad to talk Avatar. For y'all that have been in the chat talking, thanks so much, and we're so glad that you all can join us in this journey as we ascend in our GMing. Right. So,
All right. So
all right.
myself, higher.
Yep. So